We are on Masechet Yevamot, Perek Yud Bet Mishnah Hey. So normally I don't mention when we are recording because I want these to be timeless, but I'm actually re-recording this Mishnah again as we're in the middle of a war with Hamas. The year is Tafshin Pei Dal. And the reason I do this is because one of the things that we know about halacha is its flexibility in difficult times, in She'ot HaDchak, and especially in wartime, how poskim have to learn to adjust and adjust the halacha in order to address the needs of the time. And we see really just a fascinating aspect of this in our Mishnah, in this second Mishnah today that we're going to read in Perek Yud Bet Mishnah. The Mishnah talks about Chalitzah. And the Mishnah talks about the fact we learned in the Torah, that the Torah says that you have to go, she has to go to the shower to the kingdom. We learned in Mishnah Aleph, Perek Yud Bet, you have to have the mitzvah Chalitzah is in front of 3. And in fact, the Gemara added not only 3, we have to have 5 because of Pusumei Nisa. So therefore says the Mishnah, Chalza bishnaim o bishlosha. I misread. I have to read it carefully. Chalza bishnaim. If she did Chalitza only in front of 2 ksherim. O bishlosha v'nisa chad me'am karov pasol. Or if she does it in front of 3, this comma should be erased. This comma is a mistake. Or she does it in front of 3, and one of them is either a relative or an Eid Pasul, or Pasul for Beit Din, a relative of hers or his or whatever, or a Pasul to be a part of Beit Din. Chalitzah Psula doesn't count. Why? That's halacha. Because it has to have what you would say in the halachic terminology, you'd have to have a Ma'aseh Beit Din. Without 3, there's no Beit Din. Forget 5. Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yochanan Asander, Rabbi Shimon, Yochanan Asander, they must say, I don't want to go into it now, but they must say that yes, they go Ashar Lezkenim, but it doesn't mean that the Beit Din is Ma'akev. It means that she would do it in public. What's public? At least, the Tosfot Yom Tov says, Akol Panim, nonetheless, Bishnayim Diba'in Edim, require at least 2 Edim. Okay, now, and that, V'ahi Ma'aseh, Mukmina Gemara, the Edim or Ino Tomi Bachutz. Okay, we're going to talk about a Ma'aseh. The Gemara says that they see her from the outside. At least there are 2 Edim that are watching. How do I know? So what the Gemara, the Mishnah brings a story. And there was a story about a person who did Chalitzah. Beino lebeina means in private, just between the 2 of them, bebeita asurim, in prison. And the story came before Rabbi Akiva, and he said it was okay. Meaning, according to at least, we know when Rabbi Akiva lived. We know how difficult the times were. So this poor guy's in prison, right? So chalatz beino lebeina. Somehow she was able to get close enough to prison that she was able to do chalitza to remove his shoe, but nobody was there. And the Bartanura says, basically, Gemara says it must be edim ro'ino tambi bechutz. At least there were edim, there were witnesses that saw from the outside. Okay, so therefore, at least you have to have 2 edim they were able to see, and that made it kosher chalitza. Rabbi Akiva was brought the story. And he said it was kosher. So that's nice. It's difficult. We know where Akiva lived. Married by Kochva. People were being thrown in prison all the time. You could imagine. Otherwise, this woman, she could be an aguna forever, until as long as he was alive, because she couldn't have chalitzah done. She couldn't remarry. So Rabbi Akiva was lenient. That's nice. But now, if we look at the Ktav Yad Kaufman that we've seen before, I'm going to move it down so you can see it's Ktav Yad Kaufman. This is the Ktav Yad. We'll see that there's another girsa that's a little bit different and importantly significant. Ma'aseh shechalza beino leveina. There's a story where chalitza was done beino leveina. Someone did chalitza in private. Uleveita asirim ba ma'aseh lifnei Rabbi Akiva. And to the prison, this story was brought to Rabbi Akiva. V'hichshir. And Rabbi Akiva was machshir. He said, it's okay. This is an unbelievable story, because according to this girsa, they did the chalitza in private that we know. But the story was brought. Who was in prison? Rabbi Akiva was in prison. We all know Rabbi Akiva was thrown in jail for teaching Torah. We know that he was thrown in jail for promoting Torah values, for being a supporter about Kochva. We know he was executed for all of that. So nonetheless, according to this Mishnah, they were still bringing him halachic she'elot. They were still bringing, according to this girsa. But it gets even better than that. Unbelievable. I'm going to show you, I have the Mishnah of Mishnah Eretz Yisrael of Professor Safrai. And he talks about the 2 girsaot, and he thinks that this one, according to the Makpilot, according to the Makpilot, Huva ma'aseh lifnei Rabbi Akiva sh'haya b'beit ha'asurim. According to the other parallel texts, seems clear that the story was brought to Rabbi Akiva when he was in prison. Hayamim yemei shmar gzerot hadat. These were days of religious decrees and gzerot and decrees against religious persecution. Adam chalasa almanato lelo edim klaus. A person did chalitzah to his almana without any edim at all. It's his brother's almana, really. Lo kasha l'te'er shemidubah ba'almanato she'achad me'ariyah erugei ha'meret. It's not hard to imagine. This was the almana, the widow of someone who was killed in the battles of the rebellion against the Romans. Rabbi Akiva kvar b'beit hasar. Rabbi Akiva is already in prison. V'ashe'ila muveit elav, and the question is brought to him. Rabbi Akiva b'sha'ato hakasheh, in his difficult hour, he has to address these halachic shailot. This is like literally like we know about the Holocaust and in the ghettos and the rabbanim were being brought shailot, and he has to address it. That's even like a small piece of it. Okay, now he says in the Yerushalmi, Mofia Maaseh B'Rachavat Tziri, the Yerushalmi, the story is brought in a very illustrative way. It says the Gemara Yerushalmi Beit Ha'asurim Haya Maaseh. The story took place in prison. Ulebeit Ha'asurim Haya Ba Maaseh. It was not only to take place in prison, it was brought to prison. Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler Avad Gamei Roch. Rabbi Yochanan Hasandler, he made himself. He pretended to be a salesperson, rochel, like a peddler. One day he walks in front of the Beit Chavisha, the prison of Rabbi Akiva. So he's calling out, who wants a needle? Who wants me a bambait sinorin? Who wants a pipette, I guess, or who wants a little jug? Oh, by the way, who wants this? Halacha of someone who does chalitzah in private. Odikle Rabbi Akiva in kavata. So Rabbi Akiva was medayek from that. Amarle, he says, idla kushin, idla kasher. He says, do you have, I don't know what kushin, I think maybe a ladder, who knows? So do you have a stopper? Do you have kasher? Meaning, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he couldn't ask questions. Rabbi Akiva was in jail for teaching Torah. So how could they ask questions? So apparently they were allowed to buy stuff from the canteen or whatever. So he comes in and he says, hey, anybody got, who wants a Pepsi? Who wants Coke? What's the halacha of chalitza in private? And Rabbi Akiva's like, hey, you got any, I need some cigarettes and kosher. It's unbelievable that they had to, this ma'aseh is perfect. It's representative of days of persecution. So we have like this incredible story in the Ktav Yad. Just an incredible story of Rabbi Akiva, of the person in prison, Chalitzah in prison, and people pretending to be salesmen. Pretending to be a salesman to bring a halachic question to Rabbi Akiva, who in the middle of sitting in prison, knowing probably he's going to be put to death, is able to also fake it and pretend in order to give a halachic psak. It's unbelievable, the mesibut nefesh that we see just coming out of the words of the Mishnah, and it should inspire us in our day, in our time, to just be inspired by them and to try to promote, to try to continue their dedication and devotion to living Jewish lives. I will dedicate the learning to memory of my father, Simcha ben Yitzchak Kalman. Make it a great day.